morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from or if you are catching us on replay. This is The Awesome Journey, and I am your host, Kelly Steinicke, along with my co-host in care, Christy Howard. And today, y'all, the awesome journey that we are going to bring you is that of Miss Lynda Harlos, who we are so honored and privileged to have with us today. And she's going to be sharing her journey, which kind of begins with the fact of she is a retired travel agent who has turned sex trafficking and abuse prevention specialist. So we will talk about how that transition occurred through her journey as well as her daughter's journey. And we will also be talking about her book, Walk a Mile, which is about this journey. And we know it's a topic that for a lot of people, it makes them very uncomfortable. When people, as soon as they hear sex trafficking, human trafficking, people have a visceral response to it. And the fact of the matter is this is a multi-billionaire or billion-dollar industry that is global. And a lot of times we talk about it from a global perspective. And today we're going to talk about it from a domestic perspective. I think this is an avenue that a lot of people aren't aware of because it doesn't always look like what you think it looks like. It looks like your neighbor, looks like somebody standing next to you in the grocery store. And I just encourage you, even if it makes you uncomfortable, listen, because knowledge is power. And the more that we are aware, the better off we are. These aren't things that we're hearing from someone else and sharing a story. This is someone who has actually lived this journey and is sharing her experience and so beautifully turning her pain into passion, which again, we're just so honored and privileged to have you with us today, Lynda, to share your story. And we want to spend as much time on that today as possible. So before we turn it over to Lynda, I will turn it over to my co-host in care, Christy Howard.
Lynda, I'm digging your story. Not that it's a good story, but for the fact that, as Kelly says, it's a story, it's a conversation that nobody wants to have because their attitude, it wouldn't happen to me, so I don't really want to know about it. I'm coming from Houston, which is one of the, I believe it's the #1 trafficking area here in the United States. You're in Canada. And I do know somebody that had their daughter getting groomed. And I lived in an area that it was so obvious with the hotel, with the motels and everything like that. So it's always been something of my passion. I don't have children like Kelly doesn't either. However, we also were once, young women that it could have happened to us. I mean, it's been going on for a long time. And so I'm, thank you for, being open. I know your faith is very strong as mine as well, and Kelly's. And just tell your story. As I mentioned, that I will interrupt when there's questions. I do have my own questions because it's just something that really needs to be spoken about, and it needs to be spoken loud. So thank you for coming.
Man, the honor is mine, truthfully. You two are, I've been watching you guys for a while, and your guest lineup and what you guys talk about in your faith and how you're getting the stories out it's incredible. And I'm so grateful that you guys are doing this work. Okay, so you said say it loud. I can say it loud. So we are faith-based. We are community-based. I was a stay-at-home mom. We have 4 kids. On purpose, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had given up my job because we felt it was really important for one of us to be here, and I didn't make as much as my husband did. So he made enough that we could do that. And so we did. And I was in my kids' lives so much so sometimes where they would, I'd started the Head Lice Club at school, and I started the Breakfast Club at school, and all those things so that I could be in school for legitimate reasons and not be hovering, because I don't believe in hovering, but I want to be accessible for my kids and I want to be there. So we come from that background, and we're very close knit, and we do family nights, we do movie nights, we do game nights. We always eat dinner together. Cell phones were never at the dinner table. We did everything right, per se. But in our rightness, just doing things right, making sure that, faith was part of the equation and family was part of the equation. We can't always make sure that every decision our kids make are the right ones. And it took me too long to figure some of that out. There was a drug addiction in our home. There was a sexual component in our home that we struggled with as parents. But for my daughter, she was the type of person who just loved her independence. And I used to use the word rebellious, and I've changed that, because it wasn't rebellion. It was just wanting to be independent, wanting to figure out who she was, how she fit into this planet, what her purpose was. And so she'd stretch my rules, and she would try to figure out how she could work around my rules to get out there and experience life, which I was trying to limit to some degree. So one night she snuck out to a party that I knew nothing about. She got drugged and she got gang raped. Due to that rape, she became pregnant. We went to the police about it. It took her a long time to finally let us know that that's what happened. Actually, it was the fact that she couldn't hide the pregnancy that we realized. Took her to the police. The police did not believe her because the person who had gone to the party with her would not corroborate her story. And she would not corroborate her story because one of the guys who raped her was her boyfriend, and he threatened to beat her if she said anything. Oh my God. So the one person she had that could have solved a lot of the problems that, like, this snowballed into a bigger problem later on, just couldn't either, because of things that were happening in her life. And that's what I'm finding more and more and more when I'm hearing about this and teaching about this and trying to teach people to have a safe place, is that it's really hard for people to have somebody that they can really go to, or that will collaborate their story, or who that will be in their corner for them. So in Samantha's case, she lost pretty much all of her friends and her social status. And as a teenager, that's really hard. And they were putting names on her locker, and they were, it was very difficult for her. She ended up dropping out and finished her grade 12 through correspondent course. But just before she dropped out, she saw this boy in the smoking corner outside the high school. And she noticed that he was noticing her. And so she asked around who he was. Within a couple of days, he had contacted her on social media and started asking her some questions. And he had done his homework. He kind of figured out what was going on and why she was standing off by herself on the smoking area. And he just slowly started having conversations with her and started telling her, "I believe you. I truly believe that you got raped. I don't think you did this on purpose to hide a pregnancy. What is it you need?" And he started doing what traffickers do, and that is finding out what her needs were that were not being met. And her needs that were not being met was being believed and trying to figure out what she was going to do with her life as a single mom. Her biggest dream was to have a big family and a loving husband. I mean, that's what she grew up with, and that's what she wanted. And she thought for sure that was down the drain now, because being a single mom, I mean, who will date a single mom, right? And even though we know that happens nowadays in a teenager's brain, they don't process any of this in a healthy way. Right. So he eventually worked his way into her life and made her trust him. And he became the hero. He was the person that she would go to and confide things to. And slowly over time, we didn't know anything about sex trafficking. Well, let me rephrase that. What I knew about sex trafficking was that you get thrown in the back of a van, you get shipped to another country, you're tied up to a bed, and you're sold. That's what I knew. That's what the movie Taken was. That's, anything we had heard. Well, that's international sex trafficking. Nobody had ever talked about domestic sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. And domestic sex trafficking looks so different than that. So we had no idea. So when he started doing some of the things that just didn't make sense to me, I mean, what single man, he was only a couple of years older than her, so basically still a boy. But what single man would sit there and take on another person's child, another person's baggage? And I don't mean that to sound rude, but to me as a mom, I'm sitting there going, this doesn't make any sense. He didn't know before the rape, and suddenly he's in her life. He's saying he believes her and he wants to help support this kid. Like, it just did not make sense to me at all. My daughter's gorgeous, yes, but there's a lot of gorgeous girls out there. So, but what they look for is they look for people with vulnerabilities. And she had a huge one. She had a huge target on her back because she had been raped. Nobody believed her. She was pregnant, and she felt completely isolated in her social life. So he did what he could to start getting between her and I. We just started seeing the signs, and to us, it was maybe abuse. Neither my husband or I have been in unhealthy relationships. So we weren't exactly sure what that looked like, but at least people were talking about that. And, we understood what that was. We were listening to some of that. So that's what we thought was going on. And we were just trying to do everything we could to keep lines of communication open with her so that she knew and understood that she could come here anytime. Our door's always open. We invited her for coffee, dinner, anything to get her to come and just spend some time with us. I was texting her all the time. He had eventually convinced her to move out. And shortly after he convinced her to move out, he trafficked her. So he was her live-in partner who trafficked her. And from the outside, it just looked like it was her live-in partner. And
Lynda, just a small interjection. What were the ages at this time?
So she got pregnant when she was 7. She got raped and pregnant when she was 17. She was 18 by the time she moved out with a young baby. And he was 19 or 20. So not much older than her. So he ended up trafficking her for about 3.5 months. One night she came home and he was standing over her son's playpen threatening him, which, I mean, the manipulation and the coercion and the threats and all that happened to convince her to get into this in the first place is another whole thing and a whole session that I teach about. And you're more than welcome to come and learn about that. But he was standing over her playpen, hit the baby's playpen, and she just looked and she thought, I don't need to be here. And so she got him more drunk because he was drunk, and she got him more drunk until he passed out. She packed up a couple bags and she called me. She said, Mom, come pick me up. No questions asked. All right. So I picked her up. And of course, the mom in me is like biting my tongue because I want to ask every question I can think of. But we didn't. And we asked, general questions over the next little while, but I didn't pry too much because it was very obvious that if I did, she might run back to him. And I didn't know enough about abuse. I didn't know enough about anything. She was safe under my house. That's all I cared about. I was going to honor her wishes and I wasn't going to ask her questions.
Did he come to the house to try to get her back?
Not that time, but they had moved in and had moved out twice before he actually did the trafficking. And one is because the first time he moved her out, it was into his parents' place. That really didn't work out well. I don't know whether or not he was trying to somehow convince her to be trafficking her there, and that didn't work. And so then they came back to our place for a bit. It's a long story. It's in the book. But no, the only time he came back after that was to pick up my grandson, which is another whole story that just infuriates me because he had partial custody because she put his name on the birth certificate when he was born because she felt he was the only person who would be there for her.
How terrifying.
Yeah. So he had partial custody and we kept thinking she was going to court to try to get that changed. And it wasn't until after we found out about the trafficking almost 10 years later.
Wow.
But the reason, she never went to court. We thought she did. But the reason she didn't is because he kept lording that over her. You take him away. I'm going to tell the courts about this. And of course, she thought it was all her fault. She didn't know anything more about sex trafficking than I did. Right. So she thought this was all her fault. Somehow she had said yes. Somehow she let her morals slip. The third party person who was involved in this was also, well, you're the one who said yes. You came to me. I didn't hunt you down.
So that was a female that was the third party person. And was that a friend at first, or was that just a female that friend was?
It was a friend of a friend that he knew. So he had friends who were doing this, and they're the ones that told him about her.
And I don't know why, but there's something about the women that are the faces of these that lure the victims, whether it's a male or a female, that sickens me beyond.
But we don't know if they've been, if they're trafficking.
They have been, for sure. But it's still it's so hard to just wrap your brain around it. You're knowingly taking people to slaughter, and you're 100% right, Christy. They likely have something held over them too. But man,
they do. And the third party person herself, chances are she's not actually selling her body. She's the manager, the organizer. She's the one that's making sure the rides are there, that the appointments are done. She's the one that made sure that, when Samantha didn't do what the client wanted one day, she had bodyguards or whatever you want to call them come to the hotel and waterboard her so that she would comply next time. So
They
she's
did
the one.
What did you say
So
they did to her?
Waterboard her.
Waterboarded.
What's that?
They put you back, and the military does it. Well, we're not supposed to. The CIA.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. I wasn't associating that. That's terrible.
So are you saying that the third party women are getting paid? Like they're making lots of money doing this? So
The third party person is always the one making the most money out of this when it's the organized crime part of domestic sex trafficking. And this is the organized crime part of it. There are traffickers out there. We still call them traffickers, even if they don't have third party persons involved in this, because if it's a boyfriend who's selling her to his friends for $50 a shot or whatever, and he's keeping all of the money, and she's not going out to hotels for appointments, that kind of thing. It's just kind of like a small enterprise. Then they are keeping the money, but chances even then at that point, he's keeping the money. The money that they did, that my daughter and him made, he put in the safe, and she didn't have the combination for it. So she didn't have money for diapers and food. Like she came home a couple of times asking for money and or diapers and or food. And of course, again, we just thought it was abuse, had no idea. Just kept saying, you know what, he's not working enough, Sam. Like you need to come home. And let's figure out another way for you to live life other than this, because this is crazy. You should at least be able to have money for diapers and baby food. So it's when the third party person is involved, they are what we would call the head of the organized crime in this part. When we're talking about other women who recruit other women, they're typically women who are being trafficked as well. They're not a third party person. They are girls who have been involved in this, and they are promised a lot less work hours, climbing up the ladder, more of the things they needed and wanted. So it provides them, and they don't look at it as anything bad because they're doing it. Right. Like and it's how they're keeping a roof over their head and the next fix in their arm or food in their stomach. And so to them, there's other girls out there that probably need a roof over their head, or they need that next.
Again, don't you think too that there would be a component of, if I get others, I can get some of this off of me? Like
absolutely.
Absolutely.
And they are promised that. Quite often they're promised that you're not going to have to work as much. As long as I've got more girls and the money's coming in, you won't have to work as much. That typically doesn't happen.
Guys in one day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, if they promise you that you're only doing 3 guys instead of 7,
can't even imagine.
So yeah.
So wrenching.
So she did come home. It took her almost 10 years, a little shy of 10 years before all of the pieces kind of fell into place for her. Around 9 years when she kind of figured out.
Wow, you got patience.
She did have a lot of patience.
You have a lot of patience. I'd be like,
well, to us, we were just glad that she was safe and away from him. We were doing. The thing I was worried about at that point was my grandson, right? I just did not want him going over to his place every other weekend. I didn't know anything about the sex trafficking, but I knew he was not a good man. And I did not want my grandson around him, but it seemed like my hands were tied. There was nothing I could do about it. But when she found out what it all was, then she lorded it over him, because she knew legally she's not going to be able to take this to court. It's already been past the 7 years. She didn't have fear of proof of life, which is what you need in order to take it to court in the first place. Right. Yeah. And when she's telling me this, I said, so what, you're supposed to get your video camera out when they're waterboarding you in the hotel and have proof of fear of life? Like, I don't know how anybody's supposed to do that. But anyway, there's a whole lot of wrong with our laws, and for the victims are not the ones that are protected, and we all know that, and we're trying to change that. But so she knew she wasn't going to take him to court, but she threatened him. And you know what? Okay, so now I'm the one that has the upper hand. This is what you did, and you're not going to see my son anymore. And so he hasn't for the last 2 or 3 years. Broke my grandson's heart a little bit, because even though he didn't like him, he just felt like one more person was being ripped away from his life. Like it was traumatic for him, but he's doing much better now. My daughter's current husband is a gentle soul and very good for my grandson. So there's a lot of healing and everything going on with that. But Anyway, so that's the gist of the story. That's wrapping it up in a very quick synopsis.
So how did it come to be? How did it come to light to you? Like what was that like? Um,
So my daughter shows up one day and just says that, Mom, we need to talk. And she just kind of spilled her guts and told me how she discovered what this was, how he kind of did this, how long it happened. So in the book, I put it all kind of in one day, but it wasn't one day. We kind of, I mean, I had to take this in chunks and pieces because it was a lot to absorb. But she, and I can tell you the first initial thing that she told me, I went into robotic mode. Like I felt like somebody was hitting the slow motion button on a remote control, and that I was seeing things in very slow motion. Life just looked completely different to me, and I was still doing all of my normal functions. I was still, taking care of my job and my house and my family, but I don't remember much of it. I went into what we were talking about earlier. I went into trauma brain, right? Like my brain just shut down. And then one day my daughter and I were driving to go pick up my son we were doing a big family dinner, and we pick him up from the train. And on the way there, she said to me, and this is the only part that ever usually makes me emotional, so I apologize. She said to me, if it's okay, you're allowed to cry, you're allowed to hurt, you're allowed to be in pain, because you are what we call a secondary victim. And I'm laughing at her, kind of, because here is my daughter who is giving me permission to cry, and I'm not the one who went through it. She's the one that had educated herself on all of this through the volunteer work that she was doing with victim services up here. And I just looked at it, and I had already been through some of the training as well. I had gone through my parent, like I had them over to talk and to interview on my parenting talk show. I was learning all about it. But the day she said that to me, I fell apart. I just fell apart. I started to cry, and it was like somebody took their thumb off that slow motion thing on the remote control, and suddenly everything come back into full thing. And I just went, all right. So I'm hurting. I'm crying. This sucks. I don't like 1 ounce of this, but I'm not going to live in this. Like, I'm not going to live in this hurt. I'm not going to live in this pain. Let's do something about this, Sam. Like, we need to do something about this. I can't let this happen again. What did I miss? What was going on? And so we spent a great deal of time talking personally and professionally. We went out and did a lot of speaking engagements together. And we just discovered that there was 3 primary things that I missed. And now, literally every morning, I get up in the morning, and my thought is, I need to educate one more person today, so that they don't put their head on the pillow tonight with naivety being the reason someone they know and loved got abused or trafficked, because we are a regular faith-based family. I had my head in the sand. I didn't think anything like this could touch us.
But you didn't know about it. You didn't really know about it. So
yeah, and naivety is my only excuse, Kelly. And Christy, that's not a good enough excuse. And I don't want anybody else to have that. So both her and I, she started doing speaking engagements in high schools. For 1.5 years. She talked to hundreds of thousands of kids.
God bless her.
Yes. And then I went, okay, I'm going to start educating adults who have children in their lives between the ages of 2 and 25, and making sure that they are aware of what's going on so they can help the young people that are in their lives, whether it's professional or personal. Like, there's a lot of people professionally that have children in their lives that if they knew enough, they might be able to see some signs and prevent this from happening. So now she quit after 1.5 years, just a little burnout, and wanted to focus on her family. And so I asked her, I said, Samantha, do you want me to quit too? She goes, absolutely not, Mama Bear. Absolutely not. You quit when you want to quit. You have my permission to tell my story. And so every stage I do, everything I do. When I wrote the book, I got her permission. I'm trying to get a TED Talk. I got her permission. So no matter what I do, I get her permission. But she's, yeah, Mom, you just keep doing what you feel you need to do. So she gives me her blessing.
How is the rest of the family? You had 3 other children and your husband. How did, I mean, having something like that can upheave the family, because the other children are just like, well, what's going on? Yeah. Not go on, know what's going on, or they might be like, well, what about us? We have our stuff too. So they might not think how severe that is. So how did your family, stay balanced?
It's a great question. Stay balanced. Well, I guess that, I mean, like I
If
said,
we
we
can
were,
get balanced, I mean, do we even have a balanced life?
well, it's my goal. It has been one of my goals since, I come from a family that really didn't understand balance. So to me, and it was the only flaw in our family, but to me, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to be a balanced person. So I try very hard at that, but it's a very good question, Christy. It was easy and it was hard. And so let me explain that to you. My family, we are so close knit that the minute we found, so we got this in little bits and pieces and chunks, right? So we found out she was pregnant, and then we found out it was because of the rape. And it was shortly after we found out that we went to the church. We were telling everybody in the church. My daughter stood up in front of the church because I said to her, you have one or two options. You either nip all of the gossip in the bud by just coming out and telling everybody, or you just deal with it one-on-one as people, if they even have the guts to come and talk to you about it. So she opted for the first one. So
Did she share it was a gang rape, or did she just say she had?
She just said she was raped.
Oh.
She didn't go into details. She just.
Are you in a small town?
Small enough. I mean, it's not huge. I mean, it's not Toronto.
Okay.
It's not Vancouver, but it's the congregation was probably, I don't know, 300 people.
Okay.
So, but she had the guts to do that. And shortly after that, like days after that, we went away on a family vacation, and we rented a cottage, and my family just absorbed her. Like it was, I'm sitting there watching them all week, and we didn't talk about it unless she brought it up, because that was the rules when we left. Okay, we're not talking about this unless Samantha brings it up. We'll deal with this or whatever we have to deal with when we're done the family vacation. Let's just go and enjoy. But if Samantha wants to talk, we'll talk. Like it's up to her at this point. And she come up to me a couple times separately and would ask little questions about, what about adoption, Mom, or like, so anything but never as a family. We just surrounded her with love and attention, and the kids just had a blast out in the water, and they had a week to absorb it without it being in their face. And I think that was just a blessing. God just timed that for us so well, in my opinion, that's how we coped with the initial shock of it all. And then,
is she the only daughter? Do you have all boys, or?
I have 2 boys and 2 girls. So she was the second child.
Okay.
So I have boy, girl. And so then I also had a child who had a drug addiction problem, and that was before that. He also had sexuality issues. So we had already dealt with that, or we're dealing with that. And that makes it sound like it was a horrible thing. But I mean, coming from faith-based, it was difficult for us. We did it. And I've learned so much about God and his open-hearted love towards all people, regardless. And it's been a blessing, because I was raised in a very strict, very non-forgiving, really kind of religious background. And I don't think that's the way God wants us to be. But anyway, so we've been through that already. So then this comes along, and my daughter, my family. So it was easy in one sense because we had that time to absorb. It was hard in one sense because everybody was so mad at him, because he actually lived with us for a short period of time. So we knew this guy, and every single one of them was struggling with not going to find him and kill him. Like they literally were struggling with that. And when and if they talked to me, that's the words they were using. But we had gotten to a point where we had agreed that anytime we were together as a family, we would not talk about this. Anybody individually could go and talk to anybody else they wanted to about this subject. But as a family unit, when we were together, because some of them were moved out and some of them were home, we got so little family time together anymore that family time was healthy time, and we were just going to focus on the good things. And they were all gung-ho for that. They were the ones that requested that. I pieced it all together with, that makes a lot of sense. That's what we're going to do. And that's what we do. So
I love that, because it's not like you were avoiding it. You were just saying, hey, when we're together, we're embracing the blessing of our family, but we will talk about this. We're not brushing it under the rug and pretending it doesn't exist. Like, what a beautiful thing. And I agree. What a gift that you had that week afterwards, just for the family to absorb and re-solidify as a unit behind the wounded warrior in the bunch, if you will.
Yeah. And she has made sure that she has been an open book for all of them. Like, she has gone to them one-on-one and said, so do you have any questions? Like, even after the trafficking part, like especially after the trafficking part, because that's when she found out what had happened to her. She had already gone through some healing herself. She'd lived with this for, 8, 9, 10 years, working through some stuff herself. So those 2 years of discovery and self-healing, she'd gone to each of the siblings and she talked a little bit about it and said, so what do you want to know? Like, what is it you would like to know about this? And so she was an open book. And most of them just said, we know you're okay. We want him dead. We're just going to leave it alone. And they were okay with doing that.
Yeah.
And to her, that was fine as well. They've all been asked whether or not they were okay with her speaking. They've all been asked whether or not they were okay with me speaking. And every one of them said, yes, but Mom, I don't want to hear about what you're doing. I don't want to think about it that much. Not a problem.
Understandable. And I think the other important factor, and we've certainly hit on it a whole bunch of times, or you have telling your story, is that it impacts the family, and every family member processes or grieves different, because this is a grief process that the family as a whole goes through, but then individually, and they all grieve totally different, even though it's the same situation.
Yes. And they did. And I mean, as the mama bear, just sitting back and watching them, the process for each one of them was extremely different. And my youngest sometimes would just come up and hug me. And she was not the hugger of the family. We're all very affectionate, but she was the least out of all of them. But there was times she would just come up and literally wrap her arms around me and just hang on for dear life for, I don't know, a minute or two. For her, that's a long time. And then I'd say, are you okay? Do you want to talk? Nope. And off she'd go. And so some of the behaviors that they displayed during this time while they were processing and trying to work all of this out was different than their norm. But, whatever it is they needed, I mean, that was the easy part for us. It's just letting everybody do what they needed to do, function the way they needed to function. That was the easiest part of all of this, because Samantha handled it in such a healthy way. And that's on her. Like, just, that's a huge blessing that and I think those 8 years before she even found out what it was, and then a year of healing before she really come and told us, I think is why the rest of us are okay with it, because she was okay with it when she come and told us.
Yeah.
So it just made all that easier.
She sounds like an amazing woman.
Yeah.
She's my hero. She's absolutely my hero. And, the fact that she went through those 8, 9 years without like alone, that's what bothers me. It's like, that's what I am supposed to be here for. So that's the part that bothers me.
But is it during that time that she probably didn't know what to say? Like, I don't know, just trying to absorb what it was and piece it together, and not really knowing what to say. Like, I don't know. But the beauty, I think, of it, and God, I want to hug you so bad right now, is that she did come to a place where she was able to open it up, and then not just share it with you, but then go share it. Like, how cathartic that had to be for her, but then be able to say, you know what, that's all I needed. I'm good. I want to move on. You can do with it what you want, Mom, now to go onto your story. I mean, truly, what a freaking warrior. Like, in such a way. I mean, I'll speak for you. She's my hero. Like, that is such a thing of complete, utter strength and Christy says this all the time. She's the epitome of a phoenix. I mean, that's down. I mean, and if it does, she is going to rise again and beyond. And what a blessing. And I think the other question that I have, family related wise, is how was your husband through all of this? How was Papa Bear?
Papa Bear. That's yeah. My husband is, you know what? I'm so blessed. This man is just, he blows me away. So let me just explain a little bit of our history. I mean, I came into the relationship a Christian. He wasn't. When he asked me to marry him, I mean, I shouldn't have even been dating him. But at the time, it was kind of, I was trying to figure stuff out for myself, because my mom and dad had split up, and I was trying to figure out my faith. Anyway, he asked me to marry him, and I said, you can't. And he said, why? Because you're not a Christian. He said, what is that? And I told him the next time he came over, he said, well, yeah, you can now because I'm a Christian. I went, what? No. Anyway, so, and he just, I did not know that there were people out there, in particular men, because from my background, my mom and dad split up, and it was not, we weren't abused, or it wasn't abusive. It just wasn't like a super healthy relationship. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, that's not possible. And here's a man who is just so, I am his world. And then when we had kids, I am his world, and so are his kids. And anything I wanted to do, unless he just 100% didn't think it was a good idea, we did. When it come to raising kids, Lynda, you're the one home with him 24/7. You're the one who quit your job. I'm not going to give you a hard time about anything unless I really feel it's a bad thing, and then we'll sit down and we'll discuss it. And I've always told him, you're the head of the house. So if you go against me, then I will listen to that, because in my beliefs, you are the head of the house. And he said, and I appreciate that, but we will have that discussion. And we did. And it was so little times that actually happened, because he'd look at me and go, you're the one. And you hear that there's a fun parent and a strict parent. Well, he was the fun one. I was the strict one. So there was nothing he ever went against me, because he wasn't the strict one. I was. So there was lots of things he let the kids get away with. I didn't really want him to, but he was that kind of a dad. And then when it come to ministries or anything I felt I needed to do, or that I felt God was asking me to do it, Lynda. I'm here to support you. I'm bringing in the paycheck. You do what you need to do. So all the volunteer work, everything, ministries that I led, and quite often he was there helping me. So that's the kind of man he is. And he was always standing behind me and standing behind the kids. So when it come to this particular situation, he just looked at Sam and said, do you want me to go hurt him? That's all he said to her. And she just went, no, Dad. No, Dad. All right, I will. That's
and I want to.
and the other kids would like to kind of really do that too. But he's aware of my strengths and how I've worked with the kids and connected with the kids, and he realizes that he's the fun parent, and I'm the one they come to for advice and all this other stuff. So he now comes to me and goes, so what should we do about this? Okay, so how are we handling this? And so he's just been a rod of strength, and just always there. And we don't buck on anything that's important. And he's just always been my support, so I'm going to New Brunswick in 2 weeks for 5 days. And I said to him, do you want to come or do you want to stay home? He goes, well, no, I'm coming. Why wouldn't I come? And I went, well, I don't know, you don't need to. They will, I can fly instead of drive. And he goes, no, I'm coming. And that's just the way he is. It's like, if Lynda's doing something, I'm there. Like, that's just, not here in the house right now because he can be noisy during podcasts. So I showed him how to have a podcast, but he doesn't know exactly what I do. He knows the speaking part of it, but my hours that I spent every day just marketing and trying to get the message out there a little bit more, or presentations or all those kind of things. He doesn't know, but if I'm out there speaking,
he supports you. He supports you. We love. I got a husband like that. He couldn't tell you what I did, but he supports me.
Yep.
And
that's
good. Yeah. So tell us how you got into writing the book. What made you decide just to pick up I would say the pen, but we're not really in the pen era anymore. And how that came from you? Was it? Did you feel like the Holy Spirit was directing you to write everything, or?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so this goes back even to my first 2 books, because I wrote 2 books about parenting, and I don't really like parenting books. So when I really felt God was asking me to write the parenting books, I argued with him for 6 months, because I'm thinking there's no way. I never even read a parenting book. I don't particularly like them. I don't think that there's one way you can parent 4 different kids. Like, I just don't think that's. And I honestly think you just like there's so much to parenting, but realistically, it's just so simple. Love your kids, be there for them, make sure that they know that you will, the door is never closed on them. But anyway, I'm sitting there going, I'm not writing this parenting book. I don't know the first thing about parenting. And look, I have a child who did this and this and this and this. No way am I writing a parenting book. Anyway, 6 months later, I started writing, and I just pulled out all the scripture Bible on parenting. And then I started writing around the scripture verses. And then I started writing some of my own stories around the script, around what I had already written. And then it was like, no. Okay, so I really want you to take the Christianese out of this. I don't like Christianese stuff to begin with. I prefer, being real and not having scripture verses quoted at me. Right. So I went, well, I'm okay with that part, at least. So out come the Christianese. and so a lot of it is just, this is some of the things that are going to happen to you as a parent because you're a parent, because they're kids and because they're different. And, and this is what I tried and it didn't work. This is what I tried in this case and it did work. And just trying to get the idea across of all the things that could happen. There's the 5 stages. So my second book is about the 5 stages. The first one is just about individual things that could actually happen, and just trying to make it so people would understand that parenting is a journey. It's a journey, and it's fun. It's exciting. It's terrifying. And, just go with it and just do your best and parent on purpose, right? That's why Parent with Purpose is the title of pretty much everything I do. And so I did that, got that published. And before the second book came out, because COVID came in between those two, but then before the second one was even published, I just really felt I needed to write this one again. Now I'm not in the fight mode with God, because my first initial thing on the first book was, you do remember I'm the child way back there that failed English. Like, I can't write at all. And I failed the test because what was up here couldn't translate to down here. And I'm like, I'm arguing with God and telling him, do you remember that?
He doesn't care. He doesn't care.
Right?
I failed English and I write all the time. I mean,
yeah. So anyway, so that fight was already over by the time the third book come along. And I went, all right, so those first 2 books was one book that was so big I had to divide it in 2. And honestly, it took me like 9 months to write the whole thing. And I know that wasn't me. I absolutely 100% know that wasn't me, because I'm not a writer. So then when the second book come along, I went, all right, okay, no argument this time. I'm not going to waste 6 months. Let's get started. And I started, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed writing it. It was lethargic. I enjoyed the writing aspect of it. I was beginning to discover I had, a lot of creativity in me. Still not a great writer, but I had some creativity in me. And I had to get it, edited and then edited again. But so yeah, it was just this thing. It was like I just needed one more tool in my toolbox of being able to educate. And that's all that is, because some people like to, they like videos. They learn by watching a podcast, or they learn by watching my presentation. And then other people like me to come and speak to them. And then other people like to read. And then on my website, I have little snippet videos so that if people, their attention span is really small, or they don't have a lot of time, they can go and self-learn. So to me, it was just that final tool in my toolkit that makes it so that I can reach just about anybody if they're willing to learn.
Right.
Love that.
Very cool.
And speaking of that, Lynda, how can people connect with you and share, obviously, your website? We'll share any link that we talk about it, including the link to our books in the comments, as well as in the post promos. But also the resources that you do have, and because you also have workshops, and you have all sorts of tools that it can help absolutely anybody, depending on what it is that they're looking for or how they consume content.
Right. So you can find my website is parentwithpurpose.ca. And pretty much everything else is either under that or it's under my name, Lynda Harlos with a Y. People tend to screw that up and then they can't find me. But so like my YouTube channel is parentwithpurpose.ca. My LinkedIn is Lynda Harlos, but then I also have the professional one, which is Parent with Purpose. But if you go to my parentwithpurpose.ca website, you can go down to the bottom and you'll be able to click on to any of my social media. You'll be able to email me, any of those things. The book can be found on Amazon. So it looks like this. So there's the book.
Love it.
So it's called Walk a Mile, and it's basically, the reason for the title is because I want you to walk a mile in my shoes on the journey of parenting her as I walk through a mile with her on her journey. So she's the one that came up with the title. It was a great title. And so that's on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon. Same with my other books. The workshops are monthly. They're free. They're different days, different times on purpose. So hopefully we can reach more people. If you go to the website, the very first page, you're going to find a button that will click you through to more information about the workshop that I do. And then it will give you a registration a link. And so, yeah, those are every month. And then I do speaking around right now, so far only in North America, like the United States and Canada. I'm hoping to be global as soon as somebody will pay my ticket to get over there.
So Kelly,
Virtual
you mentioned that you took her class. So for somebody who's single, why would they take this class?
Oh God, I think anyone should listen to it. I mean, it's a workshop, so it's giving you the what to look for situation. It definitely does share a little bit more into her story and her journey, and maybe the things that you can see, what tools are out there, what resources. Because I think knowledge is power, and a lot of people don't want to have this conversation. And if you're not sure what to ask, I highly recommend the workshop because it will answer questions that you didn't even know to ask. And it will lead you likely to questions because you're going to be like, wow, I didn't even know that. And I even believe today this conversation is going to lead people to be like, I had no idea. I didn't know that it could look like that, or this could be. And it's free. It is, I think Lynda has such an incredible way of expressing this difficult topic so that it's not intimidating. And I think that's difficult sometimes for people is because of what it is, what the topic is, sex trafficking, human trafficking. People repel from that. You have an incredible way of sharing it and making it feel welcoming. And I think that has to do with your divine drive behind it. You know, your purpose and your faith is definitely wrapped around it. So I encourage anybody to go and to share it with anybody. Because we're all impacted in one way or another. If people think you're not, you're wrong. It doesn't live in a community. It does not discriminate. It does not live in one area of our society. It is absolutely everywhere. And this is a way to educate yourself from someone who's lived the experience. And I think that's also something that's extra special, right? You know, you're hearing from one that lived it. Her daughter lived it. They lived the process together. So those are my thoughts. I can't say enough about it, that you need to go spend that hour and a half. If you can't do the workshop, go watch her shorts. Like she said, she's got all kinds of different tools so that you can all get educated and educate others on this topic, because it's so important that we all pull our heads out of the sand. It's not going to go away if we ignore it. So that's my soapbox moment. What are your thoughts, Christy?
Well, no, I haven't taken the class, but I've always been very passionate about this, and not in a good, passionate way of this trafficking. It's a disgusting trade. It's a disgusting billion dollar industry. We have people like Epstein and all those creeps, and then we have, just I hate using the word normal, but just us people, just people you would never even think of, whose children get, and your daughter, and I understanding where she was feeling and everything at the age, this is the most vulnerable time. I mean, I remember even 14 of where I was and the things that I was doing because of the vulnerability, and then the bulliness, and just trying to escape. And so this is where the traffickers are saying, oh, well, and especially since they do everything online, they can catch you online.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I'm mad at my mom. I'm mad at my dad. I got to get out of here. I want to live by myself. Okay.
Nobody understands me.
That's the perfect ploy. And they have the people that are trafficking, and they are trafficking, but I call it I look at it as the hook. They hook them in, are people that they feel safe with.
Yeah.
And they're using more and more girls to do it. And it's scary out there. It's so scary out there. And I feel that a lot of churches need people like you to have a talk, to be open. Because unfortunately, we're not going to get it on the news. We're not going to get it out there because they're making too much money off this.
And the news, I mean, I have spoken to a couple newscasters, but they all have an agenda. They're not getting the message out that really needs to get out. And I don't care. I'll go and talk about it. And if it makes one person go, somehow they relate to me and then they want to reach out to me, that's okay. I'm okay with that. But to your point, Christy, about churches, God's actually laid that in my heart about a year ago. And I've now finally found an organization. So I wanted to go to churches, My number one thing is I did not want to leave churches stranded without the information they needed to keep going with that education. So I finally found another organization that actually has a toolkit that actually gives a whole course on for women, men, young adults, and teens on what to educate themselves even more after I've pulled their head out of the sand. So I know my job. I know what I'm destined to do is to pull people's head out of the sand and go, this is happening. This is happening in your church. This is happening in your schools. This is happening to your next door neighbor. This is happening. And it's not just drug addicts. And it's not just homeless people. And it's the second largest crime in the world. This is happening. So now I've found that organization that has that toolkit. So I am now, once I get back from New Brunswick, I'm going full force to try to get into as many churches who will open their doors to me and talk about this. So
excellent. It'd be something I'd like to talk to my church about.
Yeah.
Hey,
I have some pastors I want to hook you up with for sure.
Perfect.
So I think that's wonderful. And I know that we're at the top of the hour here, and just sort of as we begin to wrap, Lynda, do you have any final thoughts, comments that you would like to leave the audience with, and how can we help you?
How can you help me? Oh, geez, that's a new question. Okay,
yeah, that's very open-ended. How can we help you in your message, and really in any way? Because of course we're happy to connect, promote, do whatever we can, because this is a topic that needs to be regularly discussed and quit being so darn quiet.
It is. Honestly, I think the best way that anybody can help is just to encourage other people to either come to the workshop or encourage me to come and speak or encourage somebody to pick up the book. I mean, those are just, and it's not a revenue stream. So don't get me wrong. It's not, I mean, the workshops are free. I mean, to have me come and speak, it's just getting me there basically. So it's just to get the message out there. And when you can, because I've lived it, like you said, Kelly, people, when I'm in a room, especially when it's live, the feeling that's in that room, I mean, I have people come up and ask me questions. I know that when I put my head on the pillow that night, that I've probably saved at least one life. And the ripple effect of that, of all the people that, and when I'm live with a group, it's so much different than the workshop. Like it's tangible in the room because people have their head pulled out of the sand. And then they can choose to put it back in if they want to, but at least they've had their head pulled out of the sand. And that's my only job, that's what my goal is to do. So if anybody else is just ready and willing to help other people do that by just mentioning the workshop or mentioning speaking or the book or whatever, that's a way that you can help. And as far as parents or people dealing with kids, I mean, you asked the question about single people taking the course. We all have kids in our lives. We all have nieces, nephews. We all have, if we're in ministry at all in church, we have kids in our lives. If we have a profession, chances are we have kids in our lives. And just knowing enough about what some of the red flags are or what it actually truly looks like here in North America is a huge thing. And then you go for the professional help, which is why then my website has a ton of resources on it so that, I don't want you to rescue anybody because it's too dangerous to do that. But I'm going to give you the resources of people that you can call that do know what they're doing. And they can help you. And I've got all kinds of resources for all of North America. And I'm working on trying to get some for the UK as well.
We also have Craig Sawyer. We'll just call Craig.
Call Craig. Well, even Craig's work is mostly rescuing kids who have left home or been, been forced away from home. Like he's dealing with what we typically look at as far as sex trafficking. Yeah. And God bless him for what he's doing.
God bless y'all. I mean,
he's amazing. I've been on his podcast and he's just, oh my goodness, my heart melted. But he has
the Holy Spirit just oozing from him. Like you feel it with him.
Yep, absolutely. And but that's what I'm saying. He's dealing with that one side of sex trafficking and I'm dealing with the other. And I'm not here to rescue people and I'm not here because that's not what it's going to look like probably for people who are taking what I'm trying to show them. It's just your everyday relationships. Yeah. It's not just boyfriends. I mean, it could be mentor, it could be a teacher, it could be somebody in your church, you trust because you met them in church. Yep. They know how to hide. They know how to blend into a situation and make it look like they are a good person, and they're not. So that's my final.
Pure evil. And
yeah,
unfortunately, there's so many of them out there.
yeah, I can't even. So Christy, your final thoughts, my dear?
This was a great conversation.
Yeah.
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 I'm looking forward to digging into your stuff,
Okay.
sharing it out to people.
Excellent.
It's
Thank you.
great.
So
Yeah,
thank you
and
for joining us. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
we
I-
can't thank you enough. And we say it all the time, you know, we just want to share, you know, real conversations about real topics with real people who have lived this, and sharing some education. Um, and we can't thank you enough, Lynda. True privilege to have you with us, and whatever we can continue to do to help you with your mission, because I absolutely adore, and I know I can speak for Christy on your God-driven mission, because you are doing God's work, and God bless you. And we're just so grateful for what you have chosen, and how you have turned this pain into this purpose that is just a gift to so many. So everyone who has joined us today, like we said earlier, we will share all the links that we talked about during this episode in the comments as well as in the post promo. Please reach out to Lynda and connect with her on social media. Again, we will share that on the post as well, because we will have her tagged. Do go to our website for resources. Please share this with your network. This is something everybody needs to know about. Every single person is impacted in one way or another, and knowledge is power. We will continue to say that. So thank you again for joining us today on this conversation, and we look forward to seeing you next week at 1:11 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, remember, we're all on this journey together, and together we really do make it awesome. Have a great day, everyone.